house is a huge waste of time for the first 2 acts of the film. You're left as an audience member wondering where the film was going to go, only for the 3rd act to happen where you finally realize that the directors, who are also the writers, had no ideas. That's it. What, you think that's a joke? You think that's me kidding around like, alright Jackson, get to the actual plot description? No! Well, what plot? You mean the plot where nothing happens? And then something does happen, but it gives like no sense of finality? That's not a plot. You want me to summarize that? No. Well, this movie spent like no time on the script. You want me to spend time actually describing what this movie's about? No. No. Screw you, man! Look, no one really cares about this movie, I'm sure of it, because this movie hasn't really been getting that much attention. A lot of people seem to be focusing on the theatrical released films, and they're saying things like, you know what, for a January month, this month actually isn't that bad. I haven't really seen a god-awful film. Now, I can't really comment on that because I haven't seen every single theatrical January film. I've seen 12 Strong and Maze Runner, and those movies I did not hate. 12 Strong is mediocre, but I don't hate that film. It turns out, though, that Netflix has become so huge with their distribution that now they are making terrible January films. Like, all you had to do, movie reviewers who are saying January wasn't that bad, just go to Netflix. There it is waiting for you, The Open House. It's a horror movie, too. It's a horror movie on January, straight to Netflix. Oh my god. I don't want to paint the picture that this movie is entirely awful because it honestly isn't. There's some good things about it, like its premise. Basically, I guess I do have to kind of summarize what it's about now. Dylan Minnette plays Logan, and he and his mother, played by Piercy Dalton, have to go to this open house that they're going to be staying in for a while, mainly because they suffered a tragedy at the loss of their father, their husband. So they have to go there to kind of recuperate, you know, just get their lives back on track, but uh-oh, there seems to be some strange things going on. The neighbors are acting really strange, and there may be someone in the house. You never really know. Oh wait, you do, because they kind of give it away like halfway through the movie, maybe a little before that too, so there's no sense of wondering at all. Now, I like this premise because it is a premise that with expert direction and writing, this movie could have turned out actually very suspenseful. You actually have no idea if there actually is someone in the house, and because of the filmmaking, you're wondering like, oh man, are they like losing their minds, or is there actually someone there? But because of the piss-poor directing and writing, it's very in your face about what's actually going on. It has a lot of horror movie tropes, like the loud sound effects that alert the audience member like, oh my god, this is a serious thing. And they actually at one point just give you a full-on close-up, not like lit or anything, but a close-up of like, you should be afraid of this is the thing causing everything. And you're just kind of like, oh, I mean, you could have just like kept that a secret and just, you know, kind of hid that so that when the 3rd act comes, maybe you can reveal that and we can be like, okay, so it wasn't in their heads. That was a very clever way. No. Just give it away now in like the 2nd act. Even though this is supposed to be a psychological horror film because you don't know if there's someone there or maybe they're just losing their minds because the loss of their family member. Speaking of the family though, Dylan Minnette and Piercy Dalton are actually legit like good in the film. Like they actually have a good mother and son in distraught kind of chemistry going on, and it just made me think like, once again, better direction, better writing. This could have turned into a solid psychological horror yet drama film. Like, just delve into it more, but they really didn't. Like, whenever they get into their squabbles, I was just kind of like, alright, I want to see where this goes character-wise. Doesn't really go anywhere. It just kind of pitters away. Same with some of the psychological horror stuff they're trying to do. You'll have a scene going on like, okay, is this going to further develop the film a little bit more, add to the suspense? Then it just ends, and it's like, oh, I feel the same way that I did before the scene started, and I'm thinking that was not your intention. And it may also sound like I'm dogging on like the entire film, but I'm really not, because the first 2 acts were just kind of fine for me. I was just kind of thinking like, alright, like I'm just kind of waiting to see where the film is gonna go, you know? And spoiler alert, I don't think anyone really cares, because screw it. Just spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the open house, and if you really care that much, watch it and come back. When you get to the third act, that's when the SHIT starts to hit the fan, and you're kind of thinking like, okay, are you going to reveal who this guy is that's in their house? Is it the dad? Did he survive death and he's back to haunt them? Or is it someone that they've met in the town who is crazy? Because that's the thing, they move into this house and the neighbors are insane, like they have a bunch of crazy quirks. And I was fine with those crazy quirks and crazy characters if that was going to build somewhere. And in the film, once again, spoiler alert, they never reveal the killer's identity. They always keep him in the shadows. They keep him out of focus. The characters have seen his face. We haven't. And super duper 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 spoiler alert, the killer actually kills both Piercy Dalton and Dylan Minnette. That's how the film ends. The third act is them being haunted by the dude, and then he just straight up murders them. Like, that's it. Murders their friend who is sleeping on the couch too. And then the movie ends like that. Actually, no, the movie ends with him going to another open house, like the one they were staying in. So he's just some open house killer, and they leave this into like, hey, we can make another one if you really want, to also not find out who the killer is again. You have the first two acts that are just kind of boring and bland and not really doing anything special at all, aside from it's just somewhat clever kind of premise with poor execution. And then you just give us this third act of our main characters dying. Like, they don't win, they don't go through any arc, they just straight up get killed. And the killer is never revealed, so there's not that satisfaction either. And he just goes off to some other open house. Also, again, without seeing his face, we can't even see his face at this point. Which leads me to think, what was the point of those actual creepy characters that we've seen in the town? Because if you're not going to show us which one of them they are, or if you're not going to show us it was actually the dad the whole time or something, then it just leads me to think like everything I just watched beforehand was a huge waste of time. This movie in and of itself was a huge waste of time. There's no ideas that are clever at all in the third act. First two act, the premise is there, and better direction, better writing, could have been great. Third act kills this movie though. It brings it down from the boring, bland January horror film that it was to just downright awful. I will say that Piercy Dalton and Dylan Minnette, they are legit good in this film. They have good performances, and I still like the premise a little bit, so I'll give it some credit for that. It's just that when you compare this somewhat clever premise to the execution of its ideas, you can just easily tell that this movie was all just a premise thing. They had no idea about how to actually tell it as a story. They just liked the premise a lot. I'm gonna give The Open House a D+. It's a big waste of time. I watched the movie because I was somewhat interested. I think Netflix should be taken a little bit more seriously as far as the films they release. And this year, I'm gonna make it my New Year's resolution to review more Netflix films, aside from just the Marvel Netflix shows that they have. However, I think that this movie I could have just completely skipped and just watched something else, because this was truly terrible. Not completely like straight up F awful, but it is the kind of film that you'd expect to see in theaters, except it didn't. It went straight to Netflix, and Netflix should be better than that if they're gonna compete with Disney as far as streaming goes. They have a lot of competition coming up with that Disney streaming service, and they're gonna release this. Hopefully they don't continue to release more stuff like that. But if you've seen The Open House, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.